It's a bonus edition of the Book Club for Kids podcast. Hi, I'm Kitty Feldy. Last week, our readers from Loyola Village Elementary School in Los Angeles had a long list of questions for writer Jacqueline Davies about her novel, The Lemonade War. This week, we continue the conversation about persistence.
I was working on a different book, Lost, which is a young adult book, my only young adult historical fiction, and it took me 10 years to write that book. And I wrote it from scratch. From page one, I wrote it 5 times. So I probably wrote 2,500 pages in order to end up with the final copy. So at some point in the 10 years of writing Lost, which turned out very well, so I'm happy that I devoted 10 years. In the midst of writing Lost and feeling like, I can't do this anymore. I can't write this story. I'm so stuck with this story. It keeps not turning out to be what I want it to be. I decided to take a break and do a writing exercise. Write a book that was never going to be seen by anybody. I wasn't even going to show it to my writers group. Just write a manuscript from beginning to end so I could have that feeling of starting something new, getting into it, and completing it. That's all. I just wanted to do that to kickstart me back into working on Lost. So that idea was the Lemonade War, because I'd had the idea, but as I had thought about it, I thought, I'm not quite sure there's enough here. A brother and a sister having an argument about a lemonade stand. I don't know that I had thought about the conflict of Jesse being in Evan's class, which is really kind of the underlying thing that keeps that story going. So I was just doing this as, I won't say a lark. It was supposed to be something that would clear the cobwebs out of my brain and let me write Lost. So for the first time ever, all 3 of my kids were in summer camp at the same time. So I had 7 hours a day to myself. This had not happened for 12 years, I think. So as soon as I dropped off my daughter, I raced home, I sat down, and I did not leave that seat until it was time to go and pick up all 3 of them. So I had 7 hours every day, and the goal was not to write a book that was good or publishable. It was just to finish. That was it. I just needed the feeling of finishing so that I could get back and write Lost. So I sat down, and I tell you, that first day I spun my wheels. The second day, got a little bit of work done out of 7 hours, got maybe 2 good hours. Third day, by the 4th and 5th day, I was cranking, I was going, I was just working. And it would have been 20 days because camp was 4 weeks, but July 4th was a holiday, so the kids didn't go to camp that day. So that's how I know it was exactly 19 days. And I remember as that last hour of the last day, I was like madly typing the last chapter. And that was the one chapter that actually needed a revision, because in that last chapter, I wrote it from the mother's point of view, Mrs. Tresky's point of view, which didn't work at all. But I was not sure what to do with the last chapter, how to bring it together. And I needed to finish. The whole point was to finish. So I just said, I'll have Mrs. Tresky tell this story. So she writes the last chapter. And then I did end up showing it to my writers group. And they said, this is actually pretty good. And that is actually the book that of all my books, I think needed the least revision. It was just that last chapter that just needed to be completely rewritten. But I often wonder if it was the freedom of thinking, nobody is ever going to see this. This is not a book. I don't need to make it book worthy. I just need to finish something. And I think sometimes that can be the thing that lets your mind it flowed out of me. It literally just flowed out of me, the whole story.
Any advice for those who are writing middle grade series?
The Lemonade War was not supposed to be a series. It was a standalone title. I never even thought about it being a series. At the end of that story, there's a plot point that was just literally used as a way to move the plot forward, which is that some money goes missing. $208 disappears out of Evan Short's pocket, and you never find out who took it. And I remember one of my writer friends saying, you can't leave that unanswered. And I thought, really? And I talked to my editor about it. I said, can I leave that unanswered? And she said, yeah, it's real life, right? I mean, sometimes things go missing. And it wasn't the point of the story. It was literally just something that was going to move the plot forward. So we did leave it unanswered. And once the book came out, and I was out doing a lot of school visits, I visit many, many schools each year, and I would get letters from kids, I would get emails from kids, and a lot of them say, "Oh, we love the story, but we want to know what happened. What happened to the money?" I'd visit an auditorium full of kids, and at the Q&A, the hands would go up, "What happened to the money?" And I would explain, "Oh, the money's not important. It's just that's not what the story's about. It doesn't really matter." And they would say, "Yes, it does. It matters a lot. It's $208. We want to know." And so it took about 18 months, a year and a half, of hearing this question. I finally went back to my editor. I said, "We need to answer that question. I think I need to write another book." And I said, "Would you like to make this into a series?" And she said, "Well, let's wait. We'll do the next book, yes, but we'll wait." So in my mind, before I wrote that second book, I plotted out 5 of them the next 4, because I felt like that's what would be the arc of the series. And there definitely is an arc, and the 5th book definitely is the climax. There's no doubt about it. And by the time the second book, we were still working on the second book, the first book had really taken off. And then she said, "Yep, let's do books 3, 4, 5." So we signed it up. Then it was a series. But I very much felt the pain of not having planned it out as a series, because with every book, it was like, well, what do I talk about now? And what I did is I went back to the first book for every one of the future books, went back to the first book and pulled out some little thread that I thought that would be interesting to explore. So the second one is obviously what happened to the $208. The third one is about the grandmother. We mentioned the grandmother, but we never really meet her. And I thought, well, let's see what that relationship is about. The fourth one has to do with Evan's feelings for Megan Moriarty and Megan Moriarty's feelings for Evan, which again, hinted at in the first book, not really explored. And then the 5th book is the one, I feel like we all knew we were heading there, didn't we? All along, kids asked me the question, where's the dad? Where's the dad? Where's Evan and Jesse's dad? Why don't we see him? And I had the story in my own head, but I hadn't put it down on page. But the kids were really focused on that. So I knew that the father had to be the final one. The series ended. Now I'm getting questions in the auditorium. Are you going to write another book? No, I'm not going to write another book. Are you going to write another book? No, I'm not going to write another book. And I felt so much that I had written this complete series with this complete arc. But then I got a new idea. I got a new idea for Evan and Jesse that, again, goes back to the first book. It's something that is left unexplored in the first book. And I thought, I really need to do that. My number one advice to anybody writing a series is plot the whole thing out. Just know what you're going to do the whole way through. So that's my advice to series writers.
Thanks, Jacqueline. We have interviews with dozens of other writers at our website, bookclubforkids.org. This episode is supported in part by the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors through the Los Angeles County Department of Arts and Culture, and by listeners like you who go to our website and make a contribution to the show. And speaking of shows, we are just days away from the new season of our other podcast, The Fina Mendoza Mysteries. Fina is on the hunt for the bird that pooped on the president. No, not the one that supposedly pooped on President Biden at that grain facility. No mythical corn chaff for Fina. There really is a mysterious bird that poops on the president during the State of the Union address. And yes, fiction is sometimes more truthful than fact. At any rate, don't miss Season 2 of the Fina Mendoza Mysteries, launching May 3rd, wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe now. And by the way, it is National Poetry Month. And if you're looking for a bit of poetry in your life to inspire your young readers, give the Kids Poetry Club podcast a listen.
Hang on, everyone! I only have 45 seconds to tell listeners about the Kids Poetry Club podcast. Drink? You want another drink? Okay, sure. Here you go. Okay, now where was I? Oh, yes, I was going to tell everyone about the fun of listening to Kids Poetry Club every week, and the chance to hear kids from around the world reading their poems, and also to send your poems into our regular free competitions. Sorry, what was that? Another slice of cake? Sure, there's plenty more cake. There you go. Okay, now where was I? Oh yes, I have 45 seconds to do something. What was that something? Oh, I forget now. Oh well, I'm sure I'll remember later.